I'm Spencer King here with Rick Hillstead, old friend from way back. We've going to talk about innovation. Rick is co-founder of the Innovation Factory, so the name is correct, and was involved with us in some early things, including radiation brachytherapy, you remember. So, Rick, I think what I'd like to talk to you about is we have a million ideas. People have ideas. And doctors have, just dream up something. Okay, here's a nice way to solve this. And it's a tough road to go through all the things for translational research. But you've got a perspective of how maybe people who are, the physician inventor sometimes is not sitting there saying, well, let's see, what do I innovate? He just dreams up something, or he has a problem with the patient and somehow, and it leads to some development. But you've thought about this more from the programmatic way. Yep. I don't know if it's like the Manhattan Project, but at least you have some idea about how we can drive innovation. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and you're spot on, Dr. King, in that so often a physician inventor may come up with an idea that's a really good idea for a small patient population or solves the problem that he has specifically, but it may not address a problem that is big enough for large companies to become interested in it. And if you're innovating along a pathway with the ultimate goal to create an entity that is acquirable, that someone will want to actually pay a lot of money to buy and then take it through the rest of the process of FDA approval, you kind of got to plan a little bit in advance. And that's difficult. We can't tell people when to invent. The light bulb doesn't just go off on command necessarily. In fact, in my personal experience, the best inventions that I've ever had, the solution doesn't come up in my office or in my lab. It's when you're watching television or playing golf or something else. So it's difficult to create that pathway for the inventive process. But we can nudge our inventors, that in universities where they have proven individuals who have patents, who have great ideas, you can kind of expose them in advance to the technology or the general area that you anticipate might be of interest to an acquirer. And we can do this through a variety of ways.
So how much of this has to do with some of the barriers that are out there, like intellectual property? I mean, do you have to have some idea that this hadn't all been done and somehow you can't get around it, or there's no financing that you can dream up of anybody's going to do for this thing, and yet maybe some problem that needs to be solved, and how do you develop programs to get around these things?
Again, I'll use the university example. All too often, the patents that are owned by universities are more of a reward to an employee for service, and it's a plaque on the wall and doesn't necessarily have any commercial value whatsoever. Again, the Innovation Factory was a business of saying no. Most people that come to you with an idea, it has no market potential, no value. And so I think we need to do a better job in our universities of nudging or steering the inventive process into areas that we anticipate might be of some commercial value.
So a lot of that intellectual property rests with industry too. Some of the big industries have it locked up somewhere. Or, can you go and mine those things? Can you figure out how to say, hey, we need this thing. We know that it exists at Medtronic somewhere in the dark corner, and they're never going to do anything with it. Can you get it out of them and things like that?
Sometimes you can, and you're absolutely right. Sometimes these entities have so much intellectual property, they don't even really know what all of the things address. And often you need a combination, that the institution may have a patent, but it's not entirely everything you need to make a device or a company out of that. You might need to partner with one of these other companies that does have the corresponding part of intellectual property to put it together. And yes, that collaboration is an important.
So who are the players that are needed? Let's say I need to solve some problem. I've got clot in an artery. I want to get it out. I've got some idea how you might do it. And who do you need to engage with before you? I mean, maybe you're out building some kind of prototype. Maybe you're fiddling around, but you say, I would like to file. I know that you got to file patents before you reveal it to everyone. By the way,
Right.
Andreas Grunzig had a patent on balloon, which was issued, but he had published before that, and so he didn't know this, and of course the patents were revoked. How do you? Who are the critical people you need to get this process going?
Yeah, that's a very broad question as well, depending on who you are when you come up with the idea. One of the first things we present to potential inventors, especially physician inventors, is to know and understand your employment agreement. Many are the times I've spoken with a physician inventor who thought he had a wonderful idea, only afterwards to realize after he read his employment agreement that he actually didn't own that idea. And so I would caution any physician inventors.
With their university or with
their university,
whoever,
with their hospital.
Whoever owned them. And more everybody's owned these days by healthcare organizations.
Yeah,
and who knows what they've got in that contract. Yeah.
And that's exactly right. Who knows? They should know before they get too excited about what they thought about, because that is often a stumbling point, is that you don't actually own the invention that you think you have, and it behooves one to learn that before you start seeking relationships, partnerships of other entities.
Well, listen, I think we could dig into this forever. We're not allowed to for this purpose, but it gives me an interesting, nice idea of how, the idea on the back of a napkin or something to go to finally end up as something that can help patients. And the Innovation Factory was a great step in that direction, and we need people like you to help guide that. It takes more than the idea, as you point out, so you got to do some planning.
There's a lot that has to happen between the idea on the cocktail napkin and the market release of an FDA-approved product, yes.
Well, thanks a lot for visiting with us.
My pleasure.